Glenn before had many demons. One demon was my mom's suicide. One demon was being an addict. Another demon was being an ex-con, being in prison all those years, almost 9 years. And I just got so tired of all that. I felt like I was just running a dead race. And I was not getting anywhere, even though I could have jobs and accomplish things and do things. I was not happy. And I'll tell you, Adam, the last few years is the best years of my life because I gave up all that. I've accepted Christ's forgiveness. I know I'm forgiven, and I know when I take my last breath, I will see him standing there, and I'll fall at his feet and thank him for everything.
Welcome to the Making Sense of Faith podcast. My name is Adam Hamilton. I'm the senior pastor at the Church of the Resurrection in Kansas City, author of a few books. And this podcast is about, what the title is. It's about making sense of faith. And from time to time, I have special guests on with me to share their stories, talk a little bit about their experiences of faith. And today I have a very special guest, well, at least very special to me. And this is my Uncle Glenn. And I have known him my entire life. And we're going to just have a conversation together today because his story is fascinating. And I think people are going to enjoy hearing from you. So Glenn, welcome. Really glad you're here.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so start off, where'd you grow up? Where was home?
We grew up in Roland Park, and that's where we lived till 1962. And that was the year that my mother committed suicide.
Yeah.
And we come from a very dysfunctional family, without a doubt. And but we grew up in Roland Park, and after my mom passed away, my dad remarried, and my two sisters, I had one, Carol, who's already gone, and then my sister Glenda, who is your mom.
Yeah.
And it was so dysfunctional, she ran away from home.
Yeah.
It was the day she turned 18, and she met Mark Hamilton. And
Well, they'd been friends for a long time, but they met up.
Exactly. The little store.
Yeah.
But she met Mark, and then, of course, they had Adam Hamilton out of that.
Yeah, they were both still in high school at the time.
Yes,
and by
they
that
were.
time, you all were at Shawnee Mission East, I think, weren't you?
Yes, we were.
Yeah, started off at Shawnee Mission North, and you also have a little brother, Monty, who's gone.
Yeah, he's
Our
gone
uncle,
now,
died
too.
just a year ago. And then you have stepbrothers, so three stepbrothers.
I got
One
three
of them is gone.
stepbrothers, yeah.
Well, so first of all, I want to hear a little bit about before your mom's passing.
Okay.
You were really into sports.
Yes, sir.
So tell me, football?
Football. I play as a fullback, and that's probably the very best thing I was able to do. I wasn't a real good at scholar or schoolwork, but I loved playing football, and I was all-state fullback in 1966, and I had scholarships all over the country.
Yeah.
And so I really had the opportunity to go play.
Yeah.
But the problem was I got out of the house, and I went to college, and once I got that freedom, it really caused me problems because I then got into the drugs.
Mm-hmm. And at that time, what were the drugs you were into?
Marijuana.
Okay.
Just the soft drugs, you'd say now. Hashish, marijuana, those things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it always proceeds to the harder things, and that's when I went to Seattle.
Yeah.
When you guys were up there in 1969.
Yeah, I was 5 by the time I was at preschool and kindergarten up there, yeah.
Yeah, you sure were. And you were so cute. But I went to Seattle, and then I went to Vancouver, British Columbia, and that's where I got introduced to heroin and become a hardcore a very good heroin addict. I would never run out. You know?
Yeah. And you were you promoting concerts up there too?
Yes, I had White Dove Productions, a booking company where we would go to San Francisco and book bands, real famous bands at the time, and would take them on a 3-city tour: Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton.
Okay.
And most of the bands you wouldn't recognize today, the names, but some of them, like It's a Beautiful Day, James Cotton Blues Band, Quicksilver, Rod Stewart, some of these bands.
Yeah.
And we'd go on 3-city tours, and we made a ton of money doing that.
Yeah.
But we were also selling a ton of drugs, which cost you in the end.
Yep. I remember as a kid at our house in Seattle. So I don't have a lot of memories from the house in Seattle. I probably have 24 memories.
Yeah.
One of which is you
Oh boy, you're talking about
Oh yeah, you're standing there in your underwear and your
Yeah.
tidy whities, and you're playing air guitar while you have the stereo as loud as it could
Oh,
go in our
yeah.
house. And
Yeah.
again, I just thought, this guy is so cool.
Yeah, that was the vanilla fudge
Yeah,
I was
vanilla
listening
fudge.
to.
Oh my gosh,
And
yeah.
yeah, oh, yeah, I actually had a job in South Center. Remember that shopping
I don't
center
know.
there? And I was selling albums and things. And then I got a job at Campus Music in
Okay.
the university area
Yeah.
of Seattle.
Yeah.
And
This was after or before you were promoting concerts?
Oh, that's before.
Okay.
Yeah, I started promoting concerts when I moved to Vancouver.
Okay.
And but I just loved music, and I was really into music, and I loved being around these musicians, and all those musicians. When after the concert was over, they all wanted to listen to one band, Led Zeppelin.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
When Led Zeppelin just started. Yeah.
Amazing. So you go up to Vancouver. At this point, when did you move to Vancouver?
That was in 1970.
1970. You moved to Vancouver.
Yep.
You're a concert promoter. Where did the heroin start? Was it in?
It started about 6 months after I got to Vancouver.
Okay.
When I got to Vancouver, the first day I was there, I went to the beach in Vancouver and I met Helen, which she was a French Canadian girl, and I'd never been with a French Canadian girl, and she was a hairdresser, and we got together and eventually got married in Calgary the next year. In 71, but then I got introduced to heroin, and I just loved it, and I couldn't stop once I got into it. So, but it was a big downfall from there. I mean, it really was.
How long until you were arrested the first time?
Well, the first time was in Johnson County.
Oh, so when you were in high school or right out of high school?
No, right out of high school.
Okay.
I got arrested for selling an ounce of marijuana.
Okay.
And my bond was $10,000. Now nowadays it's free, I think, or it's legal. I mean, but $10,000, and they sentenced me to 1 to 7 years, and I had to go to Hutchinson. That was the state reformatory for young kids. And then when I got out of there is when I went to Seattle.
Okay.
And saw you and your mom.
And so that was really the end of your football career,
That
your
was the end of
opportunity to
all
have
that,
college
yeah.
education, all that was the drugs.
Yeah, I blew it, and I blew it big time because that's something that I was very good at.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you could have maybe been in the NFL had you.
knows?
Yeah. So okay, you're in Vancouver and you're now into heroin.
Yes.
And so how long until you were arrested up there?
About a year, no, maybe about a year later.
Okay.
And we were selling not heroin, but we were selling LSD and a drug called MDA. And I got arrested in Calgary, Alberta with 32,000 hits of LSD, which was a huge amount. And went to court and got sentenced to 5 years in prison.
In Canada.
In Canada.
Okay. And then they didn't. So you stayed in Canada for those 5 years.
I had
thought
to
you
do
were in the
all
States.
the time because they deported me, of course.
Yeah.
And they wanted me to, they wanted to get every day they could get out of me.
So you were 5 years up there and then deported to the
Right.
States. And so where'd you go from there?
Well, from there I came back to Kansas City, and
And what year is this now?
this is 1975.
Okay.
75.
Okay.
And doing well.
Was
and
Helen? Were you and Helen still married then?
We're still
I
married.
thought you were
then.
because I remember your apartment that you
Yeah,
guys
we were
had at
still
one point.
married then. I
Yeah.
got a job at Photo Corporation of America,
Yeah.
and then that's where I got that customized van that you love so much.
Yeah. So you're taking pictures at a Sears or somewhere.
Yeah, they were Kmart and Walmart.
Walmart, yeah.
And people would go in and get a 5x7 for 58 cents, and they'd make up a package, and
Yeah.
we would sell those packages. And it was a great job. I mean, I
Right.
worked 4 days a week, and back in 1975, making $700-800 a week,
Yeah.
working 4 days. And
Well, you were always a hustler, no matter, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, you always worked your tail off. And you were good at whatever you did.
Yeah.
So while you were doing that, you also were taking some concert pictures. I remember.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney came to Kansas City, Paul McCartney and Wings,
Yeah.
and I got photographs of them.
Alice
and
Cooper.
Alice Cooper
Yeah.
and Rod Stewart.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'd take these pictures and I'd blow them up into 8x10s and put a border around them, and I'd take them to all the music stores in town,
Yeah.
and they would sell them on consignment. Well,
Yeah.
they were selling like crazy because a lot of people went to those concerts,
Yeah.
and when they were there, they were buying albums, and then they'd see the pictures and they'd
Right.
buy them. And so I was doing a lot of that. Yeah.
So somewhere along the way, you got back into drugs when you came back to Kansas City?
Yeah,
Or?
well, Helen came back down, and of course, two drug addicts together is not a good formula for nothing.
Yeah.
And she was still living in Vancouver, but she came down here, and And, when I was traveling, 4 states, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, and Nebraska, and I'd be at work and she'd be on the phone hustling to get Dilaudid and all these narcotics. And, it cost me my job. I ended up just quitting, and started doing all that. And then I got on methadone, and methadon's more addicting than heroin. I mean,
Which
it's
was
terrible.
meant to be a heroin replacement to help you get
It's a legal,
unaddictive. But
narcotic that you get from a hospital.
Yeah.
And I was addicted on that till January 1st, 1980.
Yeah.
And I got off of it, thank God.
Yeah. And somewhere in there, you were back in prison, weren't you?
Oh, yeah, I went to Missouri State Penitentiary.
I just remember your El Camino SS, the black one with the white stripes, sitting in our driveway.
That black one. It was a nice car.
It was a nice car. It was sat out there for, the whole time you were gone, I think.
I don't know what happened to it, but
So anyway, where'd you go then? Which
Missouri State Penitentiary,
Okay.
and that's the same one that
Daryl Burton. Yeah.
Yeah, Daryl was at. That's a rough prison there, boy. And it's closed now, but I got busted selling a 1/4 ounce of coke, 7 grams, and I got 5 years.
Okay.
And so
And did you serve that whole time, or?
served the whole time and got out, and that was the end of my prison. You can only go to prison so many times, and your life is over.
Yeah.
So I made a decision at that time. I'm done. With all that, and I never went back again.
You never went back, but you continued on drugs, though.
I still used, but I wasn't selling.
You wouldn't sell.
And it's just, when you're an addict, it's so hard to get past using. The selling part you do out of necessity for the money, but I wasn't, I had jobs that paid well, and so I was able to afford the drugs I was doing without selling anything.
You were working for an auto auction for a while, and I think did really well there too.
Yeah, I was general manager of the one in Lee Summit, Metro Auto Auction, and the reconditioning area, the body shop, parts, detail, the inspection field, everything.
Yeah.
Had 144 employees working for me.
Yeah.
And anyway, I did that, and then I transferred down to Orlando, Florida.
Right.
And in the meantime, I got married to Marcia. And we had 2 beautiful daughters, Holly and Shanley. And I got to thank you, Adam, for, Holly, you've done a couple of messages about her passing. And, she was 36 years old. She had 2 daughters, and she got into that fentanyl, and it killed her. Yeah. And it just, every day I think about her, and it just breaks my heart. But I miss her so much. But I thank you for the messages you do about how you relate her to Mary Magdalene. Mm-hmm. And I've got that poster that somebody at your church gave me. Yeah. And I've got that hanging on my wall.
Yeah. So let's go back. I'd like to go back to your mom's suicide.
Okay.
Your mom's death. And how, first of all, as you think back to your mom before that,
right?
What memories do you have of your mom?
Oh, my mom and I were close. Of course, she had 4 kids. Mm-hmm. Monty, the youngest, me, then Carol, and your mom, Glenda. And she was married to an airline pilot. And
your dad?
My dad. And my dad was not a faithful person. And he was, at that time, flight attendants had to be single and a certain height, certain weight, and, and all this stuff. And so the airlines was providing these pilots with all these beautiful women to fly around the country with. And Dad would not be faithful to my mom, and that's what ended up causing her suicide, was she couldn't take it, that she knew he was cheating on her.
Yeah. As I understand it, your mom had struggled probably with some mental health issues anyway.
Yes,
so there was depression and other things, and this then becomes the thing that pushes her over the edge.
Yeah, that put her over the edge. Yeah, I was with her one time in Kat's drugstore where she just fell out and had a nervous breakdown right in the aisle, and had to help her out of there. And then, she tried to commit suicide other ways. She tried to start the car in the garage and die that way, and caught that. And the bad thing about her suicide, Adam, was the fact that I stayed home from school that day. She told me she was going to do it. And she was writing the letters to us kids and to her mom and dad and everybody, the suicide notes that I've given you. And I took the gun and I hid it. I hid it underneath the insulation in the attic. And to this day, I don't have any idea how she found it, but she found it. And I went to basketball practice that night. And as we turned the corner to head down to our house, there were all the ambulances and fire trucks and everything. And I knew what time it was. And your mom's the one that found her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was terrible. I could have, I just keep thinking there was something I could have done to take care of her and not have her go down this route, because she was a great mom.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the last things we did was go see West Side Story at the Starlight with the original cast members, and then we would always go play miniature golf in Fairway.
Yeah.
And she was a great mom, but she just couldn't handle the fact that she was with a husband that cheated on her. Yeah. And I just tried to talk her, telling her to be okay. I told her, I'll take care of you. And at 14, you don't really know what you're doing, but I should have done something more to keep that from happening, because she told me she was going to do it. And
Let's say you were 14, and it doesn't matter. I found with suicides, if people are determined, they'll find a way.
Yeah,
they'll
they
find
do.
a way, and you can't carry that. I hope
I
somewhere
don't.
along the way you've let go of that.
Yeah, I've let go of that a long, long time ago, because I didn't want that to bring me down forever.
Right.
It was hard. I remember when they came in, our neighbor, they took her to the KU Med, and the neighbor came in, and we were sleeping on the floor, and she came in and said, "Kids, your mom's gone. She's passed." And I said to myself, well, I just never want to forget what her voice sounded like. And that's why I've got all those things on my wall in my office of my sister Carol's voice, my brother Monty, my daughter Holly.
Yeah.
I want to remember their voices.
Yeah.
But that was just a terrible situation.
Yeah. How did that impact you kids? I mean, looking back now, so how old are you now?
76.
76. So looking back over the course of you kids' lives, what was the ripple effect of that?
Well, it was awful. I mean, it had so many effects, because we were stuck now with a father that had a very bad temper. He ended up marrying a flight attendant 2 months after my mom died. And the blood wasn't even dry on the carpet. And here we got a 21-year-old moving in the house,
Right.
And then,
and my mom was 18.
Yeah, she
so
was
her
18.
stepmom is 21.
Right.
And you were
I was 15 then,
yeah.
And she, Dad's whole purpose was to get us 3 older kids out of the house. That's why they sent me and your mom to Blackwell every summer, because they didn't want to have to deal with us, And so whenever we got 18, and Carol, she just went to college and never came back.
Yeah.
And Glenda ran away, and I was stuck there. And as soon as I got out, I wanted to go play football, but he wouldn't buy me a pair of football shoes to go to college in, because I spent all my money on my girlfriend that summer. And so I had to borrow a pair that were too big, and so I quit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, I want to wrap up with your dad.
Sure.
So the older he got, the more he became the kind of father, at least, interested, caring.
Yes, he did. He died at 85, and him and Kay got a divorce, and now he's in that big house by himself, and he just changed. He enjoyed us kids coming over and seeing him and talking to him and being around him, and he was good to be around. He had such a terrible temper when I was young in high school. And I remember one time I was wearing his father's watch. He'd passed away.
Yeah.
And I was at the front door, and Dad swung at me to hit me, and I put it up my arm to block his punch, and he hit his dad's watch. And it went all over the floor, And so I was out the door. I wasn't coming back. And I knew what time it would be if I came back. So, he was just a hard man to live with. He was an only child. He didn't know how to be a father. Nobody taught him how to be a father.
Well, I'm trying to remember, didn't his there was a story. He was raised part by
His
grandparents.
grandfather, yeah, until he was 5 years old, and then his dad came and got him, and then when he turned 18, his dad gave him enough money to get to Wichita, and said, "You're old enough to be on your own now." And so he sent him to Wichita, and Dad learned how to be a pilot there with Beechcraft. And then when TWA opened up in 1942, I think it was, in Kansas City, he met Howard Hughes down there, in fact. He became a pilot, and the rest is history.
Ultimately, he was flying Connies, and then went on to fly
727.
727s. One of the first pilots to fly the 727.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, he did.
Which was a big deal back then, too.
It was
I mean,
a big
if
deal.
you were a pilot back in those days, you were something. You were like almost like a movie star or something.
Right.
You had
Oh, yeah.
in the early days of commercial airlines.
That's right. And, he was flying that Constellation, and that was a beautiful airplane to fly. And then the 727, but he just could not be faithful to my mom.
Yeah.
And he had, he would come in off a flight, and he was supposed to be coming home, but he wouldn't come home for a couple of days.
Yeah.
So she knew that he was with somebody,
And he was a good-looking guy, too. I mean, like you guys look an awful lot alike, but he had jet black hair till the day he died.
He did,
nearly.
He did.
And very handsome man. And,
yeah. He just was just out of control when he was younger, but he mellowed out big time as he got older, and he really appreciated us kids. And,
Yeah. So let's talk about your faith and how you became a follower of Christ.
Okay. It started in about 1990 when you opened the church in that small little, actually, I was going to the junior high school.
Yeah, it was elementary school.
The elementary school, and you put up those little blinds and things.
Yeah.
And then when they opened up the small church over here, we thought that was big time.
Yeah.
And I sat right next to that one post every Sunday.
Yeah.
And I brought my girls in there, and you baptized both of them there. And but anyway, that's where I started thinking about Christ. And I got this Bible that I wish I would have brought to show you, because it's really worn out now. But and I've got others now, but. That's when I really started thinking there's got to be something better than what I've been living.
Yeah.
And then I just continued to come to church, and some years I'd have a 100% attendance.
Yes,
and I was
you
proud
did.
of that.
Yeah.
And then eventually I met my wife that I'm married to now on the front row. So I invited some people from work to come to church here. And one of those people invited Linda to come with them.
Yeah.
And I met her, and then we fell in love and got married here, and you married us. And been married 17 years now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, so, as I think about what Jesus does in our lives, there's one picture of what he does is he redeems us, or he ransoms us. And the idea is that we were, and so typically the language was used when somebody was a slave. If you were a slave, you could set them free by buying them. You purchased their freedom. And so this is a metaphor that's used in the New Testament of what Jesus does for us. And the thought was that he gave his life to ransom us, or to redeem us, to buy us out of slavery. And the slavery that we're into is slavery to sin, or slavery to, despair, or slavery to narcissism, or whatever. But we were one thing, and then he buys us, and that's what we were known as. So in your case, I think, you were an addict. I
was an addict. I had demons.
Yeah. And then when you came to the place where and he'd already purchased you on the cross, but you came to a place where you accepted that, and suddenly you were no longer Glenn Miller addict,
right?
Or ex-con or whatever, but you're Glenn Miller, child of God, and that's what I want to talk about here.
Okay.
So talk about, if you think about who I was and who I am today.
Okay.
Just tell me who was Glenn before, and who are you today as a result of Christ?
Glenn before had many demons. One demon was my mom's suicide. One demon was being an addict. Another demon was being an ex-con, being in prison all those years, almost 9 years. And I just got so tired of all that. I felt like I was just running a dead race, and I was not getting anywhere. Even though I could have jobs and accomplish things and do things, I was not happy. And I'll tell you, Adam, the last few years is the best years of my life, because I gave up all that. I've accepted Christ's forgiveness. I know I'm forgiven, and I know when I take my last breath, I will see him standing there, and I'll fall at his feet and thank him for everything. And I'll see my mom and all my loved ones up there that are already there.
Yeah. So you once were this, and now, who is Glenn now?
Glenn now is a guy that loves reading the Bible. I read the Bible every day. And Linda and I, my wife and I, we look forward to reading it every day. And we're reading it from the very first page to the very last page. And we're getting into Second Chronicles right now, which is difficult. But my wife said we need to read every page of the Bible so when we face Christ, we can say, we read every word of your book.
Well, what I love about the story is that, I remember times ages ago when you would accidentally butt dial me on the phone. So Adam shows up at the top of the list, and I'd hear this guy talking, and it would record for like 10 minutes. You didn't know I wasn't listening. You didn't know that it was going on. And, I'd hear the language you'd use and the way you'd talk about things. And, I'm going to kill that guy or whatever. You never killed anybody. But, just that was the person that you were.
Yeah.
And then I called this week to ask if I could sit down and interview. And you're like, me and Linda are sitting here reading the Bible together. And I'm like, that is just amazing.
Yeah.
And the questions you have and the your desire to follow Christ. And
I just feel like I know I'm saved.
Yeah.
And that makes such a difference instead of knowing I'm lost and turning everything over to him. And it was so simple. Just turn it over to him and let him deal with it. And he did. Mm-hmm. And I'm so thankful that I've got you, Adam, to call and get the answers to the many questions that I have. I know I bug you a lot with that.
No. It's always fun to have those conversations with you. And I know you have a lot more questions than I have time to be able to answer, but it's fun to get to talk about those things.
Oh, yeah. You are such a great... You don't realize how much influence you have on me and the church. And, I used to come every Sunday, but now I watch it from TV.
You watch it online, you watch on TV.
I do. I watch it from TV. Yeah. And, I love reading the Bible because it's factual, I believe it. And my wife believes it, and we know we're saved. And our biggest thing now is to make sure our children are saved and our grandchildren. Because I want everybody to be in heaven with us. And I do pray. When I pray, I ask God to bring somebody into my life that I can witness to. Yeah. Because, there's so many people that might know who Christ is, but they don't really know who Christ is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I am very grateful for what God has done in your life. I've again watched on this journey. I came to faith when I was 14. You and I worked together when I was in high school. I worked for you when you were painting houses, and I mean, just to see how much you've changed and what Christ has done in your life. Because the reality is, so many times I've looked at you and I thought you should have been dead. Many times. You really, you actually did have a heart attack in which you were dead for a while, and somebody kept you going by giving you CPR. Yeah. But from the drugs, from the prison, from everything else, you shouldn't even be here. And I always thought, man, you are still here, and that must be a miraculous act of God that you were still around, and that God's intention, is to continue to use you. Yeah. And also, I love the fact that you've found blessings in this stage in your life, and it's like you look back and go, these are the happiest times of my life.
Yeah, these are the happiest times of my life. One time when I was in Canada, I had more money than I knew what to do with, but it couldn't buy the security and the love that I feel now. Yeah. All it could do was just buy things. Yeah. And that didn't mean nothing compared to what it is now. And I just love the Lord. Yeah. I really do. And, I know I'm going to go to heaven. Yeah. And before that, I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Well, Glenn, thank you so much for being willing to share your story today. I really, I love you. I'm grateful that you are my uncle, and just grateful for what God has done in your life.
Well, thank you, Adam. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate everything you've done for me. I appreciate this church, and I love you with all my heart.
And I you. Okay. All right. Well, that's it. So that's my conversation with my uncle, Glenn Miller. And I hope you enjoy just listening in, hearing his faith, hearing his story, and how God has changed his life. And I want to encourage you to know that God can change your life as well. You have one more thing you want to say? Or is that it?
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right. So I'd like to invite you to join me again next week. This podcast is all about helping people who might have questions, doubts, not really sure what you think about faith, and to be able to explore some of your questions and help you make sense of faith. So until next week, when we see you again, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for tuning in to Making Sense of Faith with Adam Hamilton. Do you know someone wrestling with life's biggest questions? Share this episode with them, because the more people willing to embrace the hard questions, the better. Do you want to go deeper? You can visit makingsenseoffaith.com to find the show notes and additional resources. That's also where you can sign up to get the notes and resources delivered straight to your inbox. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe and leave us a rating in your podcast player. That'll make sure that you get the latest episodes and help others find the podcast. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell to catch future episodes and videos there. Until next time, remember that your questions matter. Doubts are normal, and making sense of faith is a lifelong journey. We'll see you on the next episode of Making Sense of Faith.